What's up, internet world, and welcome back to the channel. Today I bring you the elusive F80 M3. Now, I'm sure you've already watched a whole bunch of reviews on F80 M3s, and you will know that it's basically the gold standard of the M3 to get. Now, if you watch other reviewers, they will all say that it's missing a key ingredient, and that is emotion. They love this car. This is like the perfect M3. But this M3 might actually have that missing ingredient that the other reviewers have missed, and that is manual. Yes, this car is manual. I'm so excited to get into the deep meat and potatoes of this M3. So I'm gonna talk about the front, I'm gonna talk about the side, I'm gonna talk about the back, I'm gonna talk about the rear seats, the front seats obviously, and take it for a drive. So let's go and get into it. M3 F80, baby. So this will be our third 3 Series performance sedan. You see, last review, we shot the G80, which is the one that has the huge grille. That's the 2021 latest M3 you can buy. We also shot the M340i right here. That was a great review. But besides all that, we need you guys' support. And the reason being is because we want to get more cars. You see, the only way we get more cars is if people subscribe and hit the like button. Without that, we get no cars. And without cars, we have no channel. So subscribe and hit the notification button. So if you're unsure on how German vehicles sell and market their car, here's a little story for you. You see, the F30, which is essentially the new version at the time of this body style, was actually dropped in 2011. Now this M3 was dropped in 2014, but here's how it goes. So they dropped the original body style of facelift or new generation of car at a certain year, and then a few years later, then they dropped the performance version, which is what this M3 is. But the crazy part about it is they actually still made the older generation M3 until 2013. So you could buy a new sort of designed regular 3 Series in 2013 and also buy the old generation M3 in 2013 because this was dropped in 2014. That's pretty crazy. Now, there's something BMW did. So there's 2 things that they changed in this exact version. The first is, in the old generation, you could get the M3 as a 2-door or a 4-door. Now we all sort of know them as a 2-door M3. But when they dropped this edition, they decided to actually split it up and make the M3 a 4-door and the M4 a 2-door. And the second change, which is basically the groundbreaking change of the M3, is they dropped the V8. You see, this one is an inline-6 twin turbo. Yes, the old one actually made 414 horsepower and 296 pound-feet of torque. And this thing makes 425 horsepower, so similarly close, but it makes 111 pound-feet of torque more than this, which is nuts. That's a ton more torque. like a ton more torque. And yes, that is the difference. This car does the exact same numbers, or almost the exact same numbers, as the brand new M3 you can buy today. And the only reason they stopped making this car in 2018 was because of the WPLT emissions. It sounds like a poker game, and that's the only reason why, because of emissions. The change in regulation and emissions is the reason why they stopped making this car, and it's the reason why you need to find one. For those that don't know BMW, you got to pull it twice to unlock the front hood. Now, you guys are going to be surprised that underneath this hood is not purple. This car is actually wrapped because they wanted to save the Alpine white underneath. Now look at this engine. Now, this engine was a big deal because this thing is essentially bulletproof. You see, BMW really had reliability issues going back in 2012, 13, and 14. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to make a bulletproof motor. And this is so bulletproof, it has forged internals and a closed deck. Like, that is nuts. Out of a base, out-of-the-box car you could buy for $77,000, you had this. And the other thing is they had this beautiful piece of carbon, and the only reason they had that was back then it was really popular to have car shows at parking lots to sit there and watch people look at your hood, and that was one of the main reasons they put this thing. I know the guys are going to say yes because they want a cross brace and all this stuff, but not this good looking, because you know why? Look at the new G80. It's not as beautiful as this. Now, BMW actually had 2 facelifts on their F80 M3. The cool part about it is I was actually in the hunt to try to find an M3 that had no facelifted and had no options, and this is exactly it. This is the most pure base M3 manual transmission you can find. The only reason I did that is because our buddies Jacob and Yuri actually did a 2018 CS M3, which actually shows all the tech you can get. This one is the most base M3 you can buy at the time in 2014. So it's non-facelifted. This is just as you'd get it out of the box. There's no mods on this thing besides obviously the paint. And yeah, take a look at this front end. What do you guys think? As we go to the side of the car here, you can see that big bump out on the front hood. It looks very, very muscle car-ish, and that's the overall theme I find when I drive this car. It's very muscle car-like, but as we move to the side here, it does have the carbon fiber reinforced plastic roof, and there are pieces of it in this rear trunk lid here. There's a lot of aluminum in the car, the door cards, and namely the suspension. There's a lot of things underneath the car that you can't see, but you can feel when you drive it. The suspension is all aluminum. It's very light. They just try to lighten this car up. The other cool part about it that has carbon, because there's a carbon play in this thing, is a center drive shaft. This has a reinforced full carbon fiber center drive shaft. And you can feel kind of bad because this back end has so much power and you feel bad doing anything with it, but it's super reinforced. So I don't feel that bad because I need that power to the back end. And speaking of back end, this is where it's at. These hips, you can see it from here, you can see it from the side. This wide body hip is so nice. I like the way it's tucked and the offset. And because, as I mentioned, this car is a base car, there's no options. It doesn't have adaptive suspension. This is just regular suspension. This is how it sits. I'll show you guys how the ride is when I take it for a drive. But look at the side of this car. It's awesome. So as we look at the back here, before we go around the back, I want to talk about the rear diff. You see, the front has steering sensors and turn angles to actually tell the diff whether it should lock on or off, which is a pretty cool system because that allows you to actually go sideways and be safe. Oh, exciting. Anyways, as far as style goes, you'll see the center line, or the dynamic line or shoulder line wind all the way back here to these taillights. The back end of the car, obviously, in my opinion, is aggressive, but it's not as aggressive as the front. The front is out of control. It does have quad exhaust, it does have a good look, but this is pretty similar to most 3 Series out there with the fact, obviously, of the change of the rear bumper and the quad exhaust and this little lip spoiler. There's probably not many that are wondering how much trunk room this has, but if you are, I can tell you this thing has 42 inches wide. As far as entryway goes, you've got about 17.5 inches. And in terms of depth, you've got 40.25. So there we go, those are your numbers. Hope that matters to you. This does on the bottom have a 60-40 split, no pass-through, but take a peek and check it out. It does allow you to pop them down by pulling these little handles, which are pretty cool. And yes, it does not have a hang down to hang your shopping bags. Come on, BMW, you're going sideways in this thing. Give us some shopping bag holders. All right, so I'm in the back of the F80 M3, and these seats have great leather and barely bolstered. I would say they're bolstered a hair on the top here. You see a little bit of contour, but not a huge difference. Now, I do remember this generation of back seats, and they were terrible in terms of regular 3 Series BMW. These are better. There's no doubt this is an improvement. Doesn't compare to today's back seats. Today's back seats in performance cars are just sculpted better. They feel better. This is sort of just like, I got kids, I need a back seat. Hook me up. All right, so I'm in the front seat. This is why you buy the car. What was that noise, you ask? Well, I can tell you. It's my bottle. And the bottle fits right here. And speaking of right here, we will soon have Accelerate merch with our own bottle and our own shirts, and you'll be able to buy it. Yes, exciting. Anyways, back to the car. So analog gauges. Now I know some digital products nowadays actually have the analog look, but this is physical analog gauges. And this is the last year you can buy the M3, or last body style you can buy the M3 in. The new one is again fully digital. There is some digital piece here though. Underneath the actual analog gauges, there is M on the left-hand side and what gear you're in on the right-hand side, as well as something called efficient dynamics, obviously trying to save fuel. Oh, but these seats are great. So again, these are the base seats. Now they do light up right here. This does light up as a bit of a gimmick, but everything else in here seems 3 Series. There's nothing that really pops. Yeah, the trim is a little bit different, has like aluminum lines through it. It's all black headliner, but there is something I really like, and you may not care about it, and I do, and that's the fact you have 4. Each person has their own handles right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them. Yeah. Steering wheel, pretty awesome. Some people complain it's a bit too thick. Yes and no. The new one's also as thick. There's no real difference there. It does have the BMW patented stitching on the inside here. Yes, it's nice, but it's really about this. Everything else looks fairly basic. And again, this is a base car, and I keep saying that. I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. I mean it's the fact of what do you get for the money you buy? And if you are looking for an M3 because they are a hot commodity, what are you looking for? And do you want the computers that go with it? You see, there's no computerized accessory to this thing. And Germans really like to build you up. So you could buy another $35,000 worth of equipment on an M3 at the time. And this one doesn't have any of it. To which I say it's okay, because BMW had issues with this infotainment at the time. They actually had 3 different upgrades. They even charged you for Apple CarPlay at the time. What's up with that? So you're really buying this car for the performance and the feeling, the emotional, the raw, and maybe to carry a few passengers. But it's all about you. And as long as you have music playing when you wish, the engine is what you want to hear, and the dynamics is what you want to hear. This is a raw sports car with a little bit of modern. Let's take it for a drive. Oh my God, this thing just livens up. On the throttle. So I want you to listen to this. I'm going to keep it at 2,500 RPM. I'm going to foot to the ground it, and you're going to feel the boost initially. But as it pulls up, it feels more naturally aspirated. It feels like it's drinking out of a straw when it can be drinking out of a cannonball. Listen to this thing. Engine wants to go. It just needs more air. But listen now. Oh my God, this thing is awesome. So the overall consensus of reviewers out there is that this car doesn't feel emotion, and it's because you need manual. That's the answer. It's not because the car doesn't feel emotion, it's just because we're so jaded with all the technology today, and we expect more, and they say we can't feel it. And most German cars is true. You can't really feel how fast you're going, but this, you can feel how fast you're going. You know you're going. Now, because it is rear-wheel drive and there's so much power in the back end and it's got a great diff, you still feel with a little bit of bumps that you feel solid, but not as solid as you would feel if you had an all-wheel drive version. And obviously they don't make an all-wheel drive version until the 2022 comes out. But again, way more tech, not the same car, similar performance numbers, but this is just way more fun. The back end just goes sideways when you're on the throttle, and it is a machine on the throttle. The back end likes to come out, so you got to be a bit gentle on the throttle, and you can feel it come out. Oh man, this is fun. So I get it while I drive one of the lowest mileages F80 M3s in the country. This thing has about 11,000 miles, and it's a 2015, and it's in pristine shape. The seats have no wear at all. The gearbox feels so solid and put together. The steering feels brand new. Everything about this car feels brand new. I understand why he bought it, because it's a rare breed. There's so much new tech in today's cars that you don't feel engaged. And people said that about this, but it's because they got the wrong transmission. This is what you need to find. A manual transmission M3. I have driven faster cars, but this is fast, it's quick. Again, you don't need a car that's faster 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.9, 4.1 seconds. That is fast enough. But the back end goes out controlled enough. Going into corners is just so nice. And this is just, oh, it's just so nice. So in second, a little bit of twisties here, hit the throttle. The back end comes out a little bit into third. Just on the throttle a little bit. It's a nice winding left here on the throttle. Back end stays tight. Oh, just sounds so amazing. One thing's for sure though, I definitely hear the engine more than I hear the exhaust. I do hear the exhaust raffle back there, but I definitely hear the engine, which is nice, man. There's not much I can find in this car to dog it. There's nothing. Yeah, it doesn't tell you which direction the gas tank is. It has increments of 30 in the speedometer, used to increments of 20. Am I upset? Oh, there's really not much I can find. Is it a complete daily driver? Can you drive it every day? You could, but if you got into something more modern, you'd find it more usable, easier to drive. It's easy, but not super easy to drive. The M340i is easier to drive. The new M3 is definitely easier to drive, but both those cars are definitely not as engaging as this. This is a muscle car, a German muscle car. Yeah, I get it. And I understand the concept of not having all the toys in it, because you want to have the smallest house on the most expensive street. This has got the best of both worlds, because when you're in fifth gear at 60 miles an hour or 100K and you're on the throttle, it still's got a ton of power. This is third gear. Oh my God, this thing is nice. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when I took the RS, so let's go to Audi stuff. This reminds me of when I took the TTRS against an RS3. The cool part about it is the TTRS is a short wheelbase, which is like the M4. So when I removed the M4, it was very short and kind of raspy. So the back end would come out really fast, sort of dangerous a little bit. This is a longer wheelbase, so this back end slides out. So I prefer the long wheelbase, and I preferred the RS3 over the TTRS because the TTRS was very whiplashy. So when I felt like it was kind of losing control, it was good. There's no doubt. They both are good. But if I had to pick one, I prefer the longer wheelbase because I like the sideways motion of a longer car. Definitely the cam profile changes at about 3,000 RPM, and you can hear it like all the Honda boys would say VTEC, but you can hear the cam profile change, and that's where it makes you feel like it's naturally aspirated. Anyways, to wrap it up, yes, this is what I would buy. I would buy a stripped down M3, manual transmission, low mileage, exactly what Rocco did. Well, I hope you guys liked this video. Don't forget, new merch coming. This is what I would buy, stripped down M3. Let me know what you guys would buy in the comments below, and we'll catch you next time. What's next?